This is the Canon 5D, the original 5D, the 5D Classic as many people call it. And while this thing is almost 20 years old, I still consider it maybe the greatest camera of all time. So this video is not sponsored. This is my camera that I got in 2007, I think, and was absolutely a revelation to me. Something that was the biggest jump in image quality and overall feel to my work that I have had maybe ever in my entire career. But if you're interested in supporting the channel, simply clicking the subscribe button, hitting a like if you enjoyed videos like this, all are very beneficial. And my presets are available as well as my LUTs in the description down below, which are the main reason this channel has any sort of longevity, because if people weren't buying those things, I definitely wouldn't be able to make these videos. So this thing came out in 2005, before I had any real interest in photography. If you watch my video on the Fujifilm E550, oddly enough, this little camera, this was my first foray into any photography related anything. I made an entire video about this camera and my first little bits of it taking photos in India. You can check that out up here. At the time, this thing actually was a higher megapixel count than my other cameras, and the fact that it had a full frame sensor was just like unbelievable to me. At the time, definitely we were doing pretty good being at 12 megapixels. And the thing about this sensor is it has a very, very different kind of feel to it. I've only had two cameras in my life that have had a really, really similar feel. That feels a lot more like, I don't know, organic is a dumb term, but it feels a lot different. So this camera and then my original Leica M9, it just gives you a very like filmic, natural look that I think that digital sensors have unfortunately strayed farther from than I wish that they did. Now, in terms of handling and things like that, this thing just like, it looks good, it feels good. It has a really nice kind of like rounded feel to it. And if you look at like the pentaprism up here, it definitely has much more of like a kind of just flowy feel to it, but it does feel so good in the hand. And so in terms of ergonomics and things, this thing is really great. Now, again, this thing came out in 2005, so it's not going to have great low light, but if you keep it under about like ISO 640 or so, you get pretty decent results. I've definitely shot this thing up to 1600. You know, I would much rather have a grainy image than a blurry image in general. And actually, it still works with Adobe's modern noise removal tools. So you can still get some pretty decent results out of this thing, even in low light. Now, the reason I think this thing is so incredibly underrated, though, is because it is so incredibly inexpensive. You can pick up this camera for around like $200 or cheaper. This is the 51.8, the more modern version, and it's actually a really, really good lens. I made a video about it a long, long time ago, but you can check that out up here if you want to see more image samples and things. But this combo in particular, I think you can probably pick it up for, again, like 200, 250 bucks, something like that, depending on where you're getting it. And for the vast majority of people that are just taking photos, it's actually going to do the vast majority of things you would ever need out of a stills photography camera. You're obviously going to get a great image sensor that has really nice natural colors. The thing's going to be full frame, so if you want that shallow depth of field look, it has an EF mount, which has just like a plethora of lenses and all kind of like old lenses that you might find from other SLRs. For the most part, a lot of those can fit on here as well. And it's just a really, really simple camera. If you look into the viewfinder, I think there's only like 9 autofocus points, but it does do continuous tracking and does it fairly well for the time. It has a single card slot here, a CF card, and the batteries in here aren't like fantastic. But one of the nice parts is that you're not relying on having some sort of screen be on for an EVF or anything like that. And so the batteries do last for a decent amount of time, even though they're super old, but it's just like a great little camera. And if people could get over a lot of the other feelings about the modern conveniences. It doesn't have video. You can't obviously transfer this stuff onto your phone really fast. It obviously is only 12 megapixels, but for the vast majority of things that people are using that for, that's still enough. So if I was a budding photographer of any kind and I wanted to move from a smartphone to something that had a lot more capabilities, had a really good image, this is 100% the camera that I think a lot of people are completely sleeping on because it's older, because it doesn't have any of the fancy bells and whistles. No one's talking about it. But getting this thing for so cheap would be the easiest way and the most cost-effective way to up your game. And if you are a wedding photographer, if you're a portrait photographer, you already have some other camera, but you don't have a backup camera of some sorts, buy one of these things. Because when I bought this camera, it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how amazing this camera is. And we made this thing work as professionals for a long time. And I kept this camera for a long time as a backup. If I had some sort of second shooter that needed a camera, I would let them use this. This camera has just been an absolute workhorse for me for 20 years now, almost. It's absurd how good this camera is and how, I don't know, not respected it is anymore because just so many other releases have come out. But the value and image quality per dollar is just like unbeatable here.
Feels like a day. I might escape soon. Get out of focus. Baby, you noticed all along. So elated, so forlorn. You hate to come from. To find further along. Who will you become?
I've absolutely taken some of my favorite photos that I've ever taken on this camera. And again, the ability to buy this whole setup for like, yeah, under 300 bucks easy is like sort of mind-blowing to me. So sure, there are plenty of downsides, but again, for the money, I do not think that there is a better camera out here. I could put this up against any of my Sony cameras, any of my Leica cameras, anything like that. And the vast majority of you would not be able to tell the difference between the images. And yes, there is a reason that I don't use this camera as my primary camera. Sure, as a wedding photographer, having high ISOs and incredibly reliable autofocus, all those things are very beneficial to me and make my job a lot easier. But could I go out this weekend and shoot a wedding just on a pair of these and still be very confident that I could do my job well? Absolutely. But do I think that the vast majority of people should go out and do this and use this as their primary camera if they do have other options? Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a better idea. Even the 5D Mark II can be found for relatively inexpensive and is going to upgrade the autofocus, have a lot of other features that this doesn't have that make it more useful. But there is a reason this camera is so legendary and a reason why people are absolutely sleeping on it and is the most underrated camera currently in existence. So again, if you are someone that does any sort of professional work and you don't have a backup camera, maybe you're newer, you don't have a lot of money to spend, pick up one of these things. Even just this combo with a newer 50mm lens, the 51.8 that is the last of the 51.8s that they produced for the EF system before they moved all to mirrorless. Just this combo right here can do so much for you. And if you're someone that loves photography but doesn't have a lot of money to spend on like a new mirrorless camera or something, like I would much rather have this camera than one of the mirrorless cameras that came out in like the early 2010s or something like that. Again, the colors, the sensor, full frame, all those things in a body that feels nice is sure going to be a little bit heavier, but has so much versatility. All of the components and things like that you can pick up for very inexpensive. And again, even though this thing is about 20 years old, if you've never shot on a full frame camera before, jumping into something like this could be a bit of a revelation for you, even in 2024, like it was for me back in 2007. Now, I will say there is one thing that I think that you're going to want to look into if you were considering buying this camera, and it is that the shutter can go out on these things. So if you were going to pick up one of these, buy it from somebody other than like KEH or MPB or something like that, that has a more reputable, guarantee and warranty process. Take this thing out, slap a lens on there, and shoot some images of like the sky or something at 1/8,000th of a second. And you can see on this one, the shutter is going out slowly because I have no idea how many images I should have taken this on this thing, probably like 250,000 or something. But you can see at those really high shutter speeds, you're starting to get some weird stuff going on. And that's just the shutter failing on this thing. So if you are looking into buying one of these, that's the only thing I've ever run into on these cameras. So just make sure that the shutter at those faster shutter speeds isn't going out. And honestly, for the money, again, these things are just ridiculously good. So thanks so much for watching. If you are interested in more of my wedding related content, you can check out up here. Check out the video I did in this 50mm up here, and I'll see you in one of those videos.